Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream on Work from Anywhere Talks. And today I have Sirisha from my alma mater, Cognizant. Though we were extensively in the company, we've never got cross paths there, and now brought us together through one common WhatsApp group and aligned interests in terms of culture of an organization. So happy to have heard about you very briefly when I was part of Cognizant, but I know you further. I've seen some of your videos, so I've been quite inspired with whatever I've seen. And excited to have you on a session that we are hosting on this interesting topic on culture, right? So welcome.
Thank you so much, Sham. Thanks for having me over. It's a pleasure talking to you.
So very briefly for people, so this is a series of work from anywhere, because we see a lot of co-floaters was born remote, right? So we were remote from day one. A lot of organizations have been remote for quite some time. But this entire put a lot of companies to remote very in a very short span of time. So they say if you're a person and want to figure out how to swim, then you don't necessarily swim the right way, right? So there are certain things that you don't do. To just ensure that some of those approaches and some of those guidances are available to you. Some of that knowledge is at least the awareness is created through these series of talks, so that you know what are the things that could potentially go wrong, is that you should be very aware of as organization march towards embracing work from anywhere, right? And one of the first topics that came to my mind was culture, right? Because like when you switch from when you are in an office environment, things happen automatically, right? Things, you see people, you smile at people, you kind of go together, have a coffee with your boss when things, after a rough conversation inside his cabin, you kind of walk, or an appraisal discussion, you walk out with your boss for a coffee, and things kind of get sorted out during that time, right? You have a lot of avenues to learn from each other, from observe people in your organization. You get to talk to a lot of people who are necessarily not in your own team, and you get to absorb a lot of unwritten rules and guides that work in that organization. What works, you kind of get to know that as you get into a new organization. And this happened when I joined Cognizant. It took me like a little over a month shifting from Infosys to Cognizant to kind of know how Cognizant works and how it's not the same as Infosys, right? Even though both of them from the outside might look pretty much the same, so dynamics are different, right? So, and as organizations get remote, this becomes a very important topic, and sometimes a dampener, where it kind of pulls you down, because they say culture can eat strategy for breakfast, right? So if you don't get that culture correct, then your strategy might not even be in place for you to stay live for long enough. So that's how critical this is, and I'm happy to have the best in the trade, Sirisha, to talk about this topic. So Sirisha, how did you get into this entire domain of being culture, right? And it's quite interesting, because we were both bred by the same organization, but you somehow developed an additional wing, and flew into this culture storm. So tell us about that, how that happened.
Yeah, so what landed me in working on the journey of working on culture was more to do with the varied experiences that I've had over a period of time in my corporate stint. So, graduated from IIM Ahmedabad, joined Citibank, and I thought management consultants are meant to change the world. And when I set out into the workforce, realized that you start from scratch and you actually
Yeah.
grow up. And from there, I moved to Cognizant, tech giant, and the culture was totally different. The way what was important, what was regarded as high performance in a banking culture, was not the same when I came to Cognizant. So it took me some time to adjust, and started off at Cognizant as a consultant. So primarily was working with clients and in the BFS space, and meeting clients, looking at what was working, what was not working. Till that point, it was more about the dynamics of different workplace that actually mattered.
Right.
Then one of the engagements that we were working with, I ended up being the client one of the consulting engagements, the client wanted me to actually come back offshore and lead the team. And over 6 months, we grew the team to about 600 people.
Okay.
So I moved from a consultant to a project manager to a program manager. That was more like the natural progression that happened there. And there, what I realized was what was working, what was not working. We were doing fantastically well as a team. I was lucky to have some of the super people I've worked with at that time. And what really worked or didn't work always when I was looking at project teams was the kind of environment that the team was in. It was basically the people that were actually making things work. Every leader has a plan, every leader has a profitability plan. All of that is always in place. But what worked, what didn't work was really the people that mattered. So that got me interested a lot in people. And then I said, let me try my hand at actually understanding how people work. So then I did my design thinking from Stanford, and after I completed that, I joined Cognizant, the academy, the learning and development part of Cognizant, to actually understand how things work, how people work, how, what is it that influences people. The psychology part of it was what interested me. And then I got into, used a lot of design thinking to actually understand people, and then moved to doing a lot of leadership development work at Cognizant globally. And when I was doing that, again, talking to a lot of leaders in over a period of time, I also got certified as an executive coach, and working with a lot of leaders. All of this exposed me to what is different from a leader and what makes them stand apart. And then I got the Fulbright fellowship, where I went to Carnegie Mellon to study. And there I picked up my area of research and work was primarily in the area of um, distributed management models, new age management models, which will actually make organizations work. Because your traditional hierarchical models are more the command and control structures, right? So and I think you'll resonate a lot with it, where at Cognizant we were experimenting with a lot of new models of making teams work, making teams more productive. And the focus was always on building high performance teams. So that was the area of work. And then I got a chance to intern when I was there. And I interned with one of the best companies, Zappos, the shoe retailer. And there I realized the importance of culture at workplace. And Zappos has a very strong culture. And every individual there in the company knew that customer was very important for them, and they wanted to have a lot of fun at workplace. So there I realized it can actually be something very simple, and it actually attracts the right talent, and it also lets people. You can actually build the right culture to nurture people. And that's where I also realized there's a lot of alignment between the purpose of the organization, the reason for its existence, and culture. Came back, worked for some time in the corporate world, and tried experimenting a lot of these things there. And that's where I realized a lot of the place where you can create maximum impact is for the small and medium-sized organizations, especially in the culture journey and culture space. And that's how I started off on my own, started consulting with startups, small, medium-sized companies, helping them build culture. Because for startups, it's more easy, right? You're actually setting the practices in place before you're growing. For bigger organizations, like I jokingly say, it's like doing a triple bypass when somebody has hypertension and diabetes. So what to manage, you can't even start on your culture transformation journey without stabilizing a lot of things. And while you're doing, you need to do very slow changes, tiny changes, and then getting things working. So this has been a space that's been extremely gratifying, because I see a lot of transformation that's happening. There are companies which have consulted who are, getting to their Series B, Series C. So that makes me feel good about what I'm doing as my core work. Yeah.
Lovely. So I think it's you've kind of found yourself into this, right? So one door opened into another opportunity, another one, you kind of somehow narrowed down onto this field. But before I go, right, so this is something that culture, you ask 10 people in a room as to what is culture, you'll get 10 definitions of it, right? 1 or 0 or a black or white, as many things are in this world, right? So what should, again, let's not probably take the definition for large, I mean, so what a startup, we talked about startups and SMBs, right? What should they define as culture, right? What should they
Yeah.
kind of call it? How do you kind of say, hey, this is our culture? Because if I'm hiring somebody, how do I spell them out saying, hey, this is who we are?
Yeah. So culture is probably one of the words that is grossly misused in the corporate world. Grossly misused, especially in India, where we just started, when we started on our culture journeys at most places, some of those organizations, it was more copying the West.
Yeah,
While fundamentally the value systems, everything is very, very different. So if I can take a step back from the culture piece, right? So culture is nothing that exists standalone. If you really want to build a culture for your organization, it can never be standalone. It starts with defining the purpose of the organization. Why are you existing? Why are you in
right,
business? What is the bigger problem for the community that you're trying to solve? That's the purpose of your organization.
right,
Once you're clear about the purpose of the organization, uh, then you actually start defining what is your desired identity. So when you really want to get there, want to achieve your purpose, what do you want to be known as?
right,
What do you want to stand for as an organization? It's not just about numbers all the time, right? There's an identity that you build along the process.
right, right,
So once you know your desired identity, then in order to make sure, it's like writing your own obituary, the typical exercise that we do where you write your own obituary. Now, what is writing your own obituary? It's about writing three things that you want people or the rest of
so,
the world to know you for,
right, right,
right? And then you ensure that you show that at every stage of your working life. Uh, and then you define similarly for the organization. You also have to define what is your desired identity, right? What do you want to be known for when you become the
right,
organization that you want to become? And that
right,
boils down to what is the culture that you need to breed in the organization to get there. Now, if I get to defining what do I mean by that culture, right? Culture is, very simply put, a set of beliefs or values that people follow in the organization. It is the way people behave when nobody is watching.
yeah,
Okay, and that nobody watching is the more important part there, where that this is how things work in this organization. And often people mix culture and values, but culture and values are very different. Culture is, how do I want my organization to know, what are the behaviors that I want to encourage in the organization. That actually results in values for the organization. Now, what are these values? These are not those fancy words that are put up on a plaque at the entry or to the office, right, or in the lobby often, but those
right,
values are actually, what are those non-compromisable things? What are things in my organization that I don't want to compromise about? What do people get recognized for? What do people get what behaviors do people get recognized for? What behaviors do people get penalized for? That is what is the values of the organization. So a startup, big organization, a fundamental genesis of culture and values is the same. So you start with the purpose, come to your desired identity, and from there boil down to what are your culture statements, and then go to your values. Uh, Sham, am I audible? I'm not sure if you're there, Sham, but probably I'll continue talking about how do organizations do it. Now, a larger organization or a smaller organization, it's the is the same, right? You define who do you want to be known as, what do you want to do, what is the larger problem that you're solving, and then how do you boil down to it. Now, why is it important for defining culture? A lot of times when I'm talking to startups, what often comes up is, do you really need to we're going to do there when we get to 50 people, when we get to 100 people. That's typically the response that I get. But you have to realize that the moment it is more than one person, even if it's two co-founders, the culture is always changing. Lot of things are actually uh, the culture gets formed. So you like it, you don't like it, the culture of the organization is always getting formed. Now, when the culture is anyway getting formed, you might as well do it the way you want to do it. A lot of times in startups, you have what is called the owner founder culture. All right. Guess y'all can hear me now. A lot of times, what happens in the organization is the owner founder culture, where the owner or the founder actually decides what is it, how is it that they want the organization to be, and how is it, what is the kind of organization that they want to build. Remember the desired identity that I was talking about, and very few times it happens that if they're a couple of co-founders, both of them have the same view. A lot of times in my experience, like I was consulting for a company in Bangalore recently, and the three co-founders, one is the designate CEO, the other is a COO, and then this is a CTO. Now what happens with this format is all three of them, while they align on what is the problem they're trying to solve, the larger purpose for the organization, each of them defines it very differently. Then what happens is you have very different culture. What gets recognized? What is the cause problem that you're trying to solve? The purpose of the organization is a mix of both short term, long term, all of that, right? So what gets solved, what doesn't get solved, is something that becomes very difficult for one to figure out.